singers, I'm Sara and this is SingingTV.com. Together you and I and Jeff, who I'm about to tell you about, are making singing simple. So, I got some love, since we talked about that in the last episode, from Jeff. I don't know his last name, but he is from Hamilton, Ontario in Canada. And he just, not only was he so into leaving a comment, but he called the studio line and he left this message. I'm actually going to let you hear Jeff because he went to the trouble. So this episode is for you, Jeff, and we're going to talk about exactly what he's talking about. Give a listen here.
I'm just curious about if you would do any videos on how female singers calm their breathing down after a concert, you know, when they're heavy breathing. Also, how they can not breathe out and then in on the mic after the phrase. Because you hear some female singers do that, like Kelly Clarkson in the studio version of Mr. Know-It-All. And you hear Katy Perry do it too in Hot and Cold. It's like they breathe out and in on the mic. I'm just curious about why they do that, and if you could explain how and why they do that. If you could get back to me regarding...
All right, so you heard Jeff from Canada asking this question, and I think there are actually a couple layers to this question, so let's talk about it. What he's saying is, how can we get singers, and he's talking about female singers, but really any singer, to not breathe so heavy on the mic, right? He doesn't like when you hear this, or things like that. It's what I think, Jeff, you're asking. Correct me, of course, if I'm wrong. But there are also a couple other layers to this question. The first is this. Jeff, actually, it is answered on the website. What I want you to do is just go to SingingTV.com and put in breath or breathe into the search bar, and you'll find every episode we've ever done on breathing, especially the latest ones really talk about that. But let's talk about it again here. So what I'd say is we talk about what I like to call the intelligent face, because it looks the opposite of intelligent, where rather than using the jaw to be open, or closed, right, this masseter muscle is being used there, we want to relax our jaw so that our jaw can basically hang open. It's not but it's just this, And what you'll notice is that you can barely hear my breath. If I'm breathing loudly, if you hear a what you're basically hearing is a tightened throat. You've heard about, I think it was episode 18 or something we did on creating an open throat. Actually, Jeff, that's good for you. Go back and watch that. Way a few years ago when we did that episode. But I say we, I don't know, it's just me and my guests. So when we talk about having an intelligent face, right, which is what that does is it allows for our throat to be open. So when we say open throat, there are a number of reasons for doing that when singing, but also it's important to do when we're breathing. Why? Well, think about bubble tea or boba. If you know what that is, congratulations. There are a lot of boba tea shops here in LA, and I love them. But it's this kind of tea where these little tapioca balls go in the bottom. So there's this big old straw to make room for the tapioca balls versus a regular straw. One is more efficient at getting air or tea in the mouth. Big old straw, little straw. Clearly it's the bigger straw, it's the boba straw, right? More tea in mouth, most efficient. Same thing about having an open throat. If we're doing this, basically our throat and pharynx and trachea are actually tensing up. And of course, we've talked about before that in singing we want to have the least tense body as we can. Face, neck, throat, larynx, shoulders, torso, the whole thing. We want to generally be as relaxed as possible for the most part. And maybe aside from, of course, the diaphragm, the intercostals, and the obliques. But aside from that, we want to be as relaxed as possible when we sing. And in order to do that, this is the most helpful thing. So if you try and just kind of let your jaw go slack, you notice that not only will you breathing probably slow, but it'll be very, 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 very silent. Almost inaudible, as opposed to right where your your breathing is a little bit more shallow. You can see probably my chest moving a lot more than if I'm breathing with an open throat. So the whole mechanism is working better. The throat is more open, and the breathing is much more relaxed. So that covers two things that Jeff was talking about. One, being relaxed after or during a show. Two, getting it so that we have a lot less sound, so you can't hear the breathing. You know, a lot of the times, to me, sometimes I like hearing people breathing on record, even though perhaps it's not the greatest technique in terms of breathing. It reminds me that the artist is real, that it's not some computerized, you know, crazy sound. I used to love it when I was a teenager. I was listening to a lot of Tori Amos. You can hear on some of her recordings, you can hear the piano pedal and the felt of the piano touching the strings. And every time she pressed the pedal, I could hear it. And it reminded me, it sort of made it much more intimate to me. So I like that. But if you don't like it, and generally in order to have good breathing technique, we really want to relax the jaw. It doesn't mean our face has to look like this, right? You can brighten up the face, but we start with, notice when I breathe like that, I'm not having this big rising shoulder, chest issue. It's a much deeper breath using what a lot of people like to call a diaphragmatic breath. I don't know how far the camera is, but if you can see, my whole midsection, my rib cage moves out of the way to make room for a deeper, lower breath. It makes much more room for my lungs to expand. So, I think that covers it. Let me look here. The other thing is when you're breathing on the mic like that, you know, I think very often we want to keep the mic as Odie makes an appearance. Episode 92. There he is. He's outside, but you can clearly the studio is not that soundproof. Anyway, episode 92, Otis comes back into the picture. There you go. And also, if we're talking about breathing, and very often you can actually just edit those out when we're digitally recording things in Logic Pro Tools, which are the standards these days. I would rather, you know, actually have some technique rather than needing to digitally edit things out. So I hope, Jeff, that answers your question. I hope for the rest of you, after the episode that we just did, lets you know that I really do make episodes based on people's questions. Jeff, if you have other questions, please just throw me a tweet, comment, phone call, whatever you did, just like you did. And for the rest of you, at Singing TV, facebook.com/Singing TV, comments below. Question of the day: when or how did breathing click for you? What did it take for you to go, oh, I get it? All right. I'm Sara Lieb. This is SingingTV.com. Together, you and I, we are making singing simple. Thanks, Jeff.